What's the most insane coincidence you've experienced? I was once mugged by 4 guys on one of the main shopping streets of Nairobi, Kenya. One of the guys had me in a chokehold, and just before I was about to pass out, they dropped me and ran. At the time I didn't know why. 12 months later, sitting on a beach on an island in Thailand, I meet a British couple who did business in Kenya and we start to talk about how dangerous it was getting for foreigners. They described an incident the year before of turning a corner and seeing a white guy being mugged, and a shopkeeper rescued him by hitting one of them over the head with a bat. They were in the same street, on the same day, at the exact same time I was there. It was me who they witnessed being mugged. What are the odds of randomly meeting up on a beach in Thailand a year later? I live in Australia and I have for almost my whole life, but I was born in Dubai. Every weekend in Dubai my mum would take me to the Hilton Beach Club and sit me in front of the pastry chef and eat. We moved away from Dubai really early on, so I don't even remember much. Fast forward to 17 years of age. A new kid at school had just moved from a nearby town. We became friends and we both loved cricket, and we practiced a lot together. My dad and I were giving him a lift home after we were practicing and dad asks, "Where were you born?" And he says Dubai, and the conversation continues, and I say I was too, etc. Then he says, "My parents used to be the pastry chefs at the Hilton Beach Club," apostrophe, and this blew me away. Here we were 16 years later, halfway across the world, and every weekend I sat in front of his parents and ate what they made for me. To this day I still get goosebumps thinking about it. I mean, what are the chances? A few years ago I into a cab heading out for the evening in downtown Toronto. Shortly after being dropped off I realized I left my phone in the cab. I tried calling it with no luck. I called the cab company, but because I had flagged the cab and paid cash they had no real way of knowing which cab I was in. I figured the phone was as good as gone, and went about my night. Many hours later, and having moved around the city quite a bit I'm ready to call it a night, so flag another cab. Sitting in the backseat I start to think the driver looks familiar, and realize that I'm in the same cab I took earlier. He hasn't found a phone, but I start looking anyways and sure enough there it is. Jammed in the seat. Me and my flip phone were happily reunited, only for me to put it in a washing machine 2 days later. An American friend of mine by the name of Tom took his family on vacation to check out Antarctica. He met an Australian guy named Paul on Christmas Day in Antarctica. They didn't exchange contact info. A year later, Christmas Day, they take their vacation to Machu Picchu. He is looking down at a map when he hears, "Hey Tom, how the hell are you?" It was Paul, taking his family on their annual trip as well. Never could explain this payphone incident. Saturday night out with friends. We decide to call my friend Al to see if he wants to join us. This was in England long before mobile phones, so we had to use one of the iconic red phone booths. Someone was already using it, so we had to wait a few minutes. Guy leaves and we cram in the booth. Now, in those days, in order to make a call you would first get a dial tone, then call the number. When the person answered you would hear a bunch of beeps, at which point you insert the coins. So I pick up the phone, but hear no dial tone. I hang the phone up and try again. Still no dial tone. Seems to be still connected to the previous call. I say hello to see if anyone is still on the line. Person answers hello. It was my friend Al. He had just picked up his phone to make a call, and somehow, miraculously, without even dialing his number, we were connected. We all went to the pub after and tried to figure out how the hell this happened. But it remains a mystery. If I did not have my friends with me at the time as witnesses, I would have believed it was my mind playing tricks on me. In 2004 I was 18, and on a 3-week tour of Europe. I was at THR Louvre, and had just experienced the cluster duck that was the Mona Lisa exhibit. After looking at it for 2 minutes I started to wander around aimlessly. As I was walking an older couple asked if I knew how to get to the Mona Lisa exhibit. I told them yes, and because I'm horrible with directions, I'd be happy to walk them there myself. They were really nice and very appreciative that I was taking time to help them. They asked me where I was from, US and Nashville, but I mentioned my parents were immigrants from Italy. They told me they were from Portugal on anniversary. We talked a bit more. Told them my name and they were really excited about, since I shared the same name as their grandchild. Anyways, we get to the exhibit and I go to part ways and shake their hands, but get pulled in for 2 massive hugs and a kiss on the cheek. They give me their address and say anytime I'm in Portugal to stop by and I'll have a place to stay and eat. We take a group photo and leave. 7 years later I'm in Munich for Oktoberfest. I'm standing outside my hotel waiting for my friends when an older couple ask if I know how to get to the fairgrounds. Again, I'm shit with directions. So since I'm headed there I tell them they can just follow me and my friends. Again we start talking about where we are all from. Now, I have a memory like an elephant and once they mention they're from Portugal I start to think maybe these are the same people. I ask them if they have grandkids and they say they have 6. I ask if one of their names is Historiofaman. They look at each other sort of surprised and say yes. They ask how do I know that and tell them that I had met them 7 years prior in Paris at the Louvre. The old lady gets really happy and starts crying and starts to hug me. They say they remembered me now and asked why I never came to visit. That they had our picture in a frame on their wall and always wondered what happened to the nice American boy. We spent the next 3 hours drinking beers and catching up. Luckily we got there early, so we were able to get an empty table and they bought all the beers the entire time. This time they demanded I give them my email so we could keep in contact. I even added their son on Facebook. 2 years later I go and visit for the summer and sure enough there on the wall amongst the rest of their family pictures is 18 years old me standing between them. I'll tell you all something. I'm a bit of an introvert and can be awkward when meeting new people simply because I like to get a feel for who they are and where their boundaries are, but never in my life, other than with my own family, and maybe not even then, have I ever felt more at home and that I belonged than the 3 weeks I spent with them. We still talk weekly. It's like having a second family. In high school, my friend set me up with her boyfriend's cousin. Let's call him Jack. Jack and I were walking around an amusement park and started talking about recent family spring break vacations. Turns out, both Jack and I had been in Las Vegas during the same week. We stayed at the same hotel. The conversation changed subjects when Jack stopped in the middle of the sidewalk and said I saw you in Las Vegas. I thought he was full of crap. There's no way he would remember some random girl among the thousands of people there. He told me the exact place he saw me and that my sister and I were posing for a photo. We got back to my house and found the picture. There were Jack and his brother in the background. When I was in grade 2, our family moved from Manitoba to Arizona for a year due to a contract my dad was working. We rented out the house fully furnished for the year. While in Arizona, we flew to Alberta one weekend. On the flight from Arizona to Alberta, I sat beside a boy my age and we started talking. It went something like this. Me, what city are you from? Him, Winnipeg. Me too. Me, what school do you go to? Him, school name. Me, cool. I used to go there too. Me, what street do you live on? Him, street name. Me, I lived on that street. It turns out, his family was renting our house while we were gone. So I was sitting beside the boy who was sleeping in my bed while we were in Arizona. When I was 13, I was on a family holiday in Venice. We were on a gondola, Venetian punt boat, touring the waterways of the city. We got halfway down a long passageway, and another gondola passes us by, carrying a man and a woman, and the punter, the man and my dad lock eyes, exclaim one another's name, and have a quick handshake as our gondolas pass. Myself, brother and mother sit quietly, pretty stunned, while the woman on the other boat explodes with what? Exclamation mark. Exclamation mark. Question mark? Who's that? Exclamation mark. Question mark? Exclamation mark. How do you know him? Exclamation mark. Exclamation mark. We floated off in the other direction. Comparatively swag and chill. Turns out it was a guy my dad went to university with and hadn't seen him since. They haven't even contacted one another since. It's crazy they recognized one another, considering they were both in their late 40s now, passing fleetingly on 2 gondolas in Venice. About 10 years ago I tried to get into Six Flags with a tiny keychain Swiss Army knife. It literally had a dull 1-foot blade. They told me I could either throw it away, take it to my car a mile away, or rent a locker for like $10. So I decided to hide it in the planter. I looked down and saw a big piece of bark laying in the dirt and figured it would be a good hiding place. I picked it up and found another ducking mini Swiss Army knife. I placed mine next to the first and went into the park. When I returned, the other knife was gone and a smiley face was etched into the dirt in its place. My family used to take little summer vacations. One summer, I was about 7 to 8, we stayed at a campground about 4 hours from home. There were a bunch of kids there, and one day we all started playing tag. I was it, and was chasing another young boy, and when I tagged him, I pushed him too hard, and he fell and broke his arm. I remember the scene vividly. Fast forward to college. I became good friends with my neighbor in the dorm, and we ended up getting a place together our sophomore year. The following year, no longer living together, we went out for a few beers and the topic of broken bones came up. I've only broken one bone, and it was my arm, when I was 7. Some kid at a campground pushed me over while playing tag. It was me. Still can't believe it. One time I parked, without even noticing, next to a car with the same license plate as me. I had her MA plate. She had her NH plate, both with the same 5-digit number. The weirder thing was that both of us had kept the plate as a novelty plate because the state wasn't making 5-digit plate numbers anymore. But a family member wanted to keep it. In my case, my dad wanted to keep his dad's plate. My first semester of college, I moved out of state. I was first to move into the apartment and had a few days to myself. After orientation I found my new roommate sitting on his bed. When I introduced myself, he asked where I was from. When I told him, he said, "I used to have a friend named Simon." I said I used to have a friend named Will. We were best friends in 1st and 2nd grade until his family moved. When I was in high school, I was aimlessly playing around our library one day. Like any large public high school, our library had literally thousands of books quietly tucked away in shelves, and rarely, if ever, touched. That day I pulled a book at random from a shelf in the back and sat down to read it. After opening it, a slip of paper fell out, and I quickly recognized the dashed 10 digits written on it as a phone number. I hastily read the number, and it was my older sister's number, who had graduated my high school years earlier. Someone wrote her number and tucked it away into a random book in the back until I found it years later. As a college sophomore, I went on a trip to France by myself. I was sitting in Notre Dame Cathedral, listening to music, when a girl I dated in high school sat down near me, totally at random. We were both speechless when we saw one another there, out of the blue, in a foreign country within a vast cathedral. Please subscribe and leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see more of Reddit Universe.